Fala galera, tudo bem? Vocês estão na Agostinho's Music. Antes de começar a nossa entrevista, já começa aí curtindo, compartilhando, se inscrevendo no canal, no Instagram e no YouTube. Hoje entrevista com o Eli Prinsen, vocal do Saint. Fica comigo!
Hi, my name is Eli Prinsen. I'm the lead vocalist of Saint, and I'm also the founder of Hybrid Vocal Technique. It's my pleasure to do this interview today.
Eli, obrigado pela sua presença. Mas diz aí, como a música entrou na tua vida? Como você resolveu ser vocalista profissional?
Well, music was always a part of my life. As the youngest of 5 kids, there was always music in my house. My older siblings were always playing a variety of classic rock and hard rock, early heavy metal. So from the time I was a little child, I was listening to this stuff. And my earliest feelings that I wanted to be a singer, even though I didn't pursue that for many, many years, was listening to my oldest sister playing Boston and the really early AC/DC. So listening to singers like Brad Delp and Bon Scott had kind of an influence on me. And I used to think, wow, it'd be really cool to be able to sing like that. So I didn't follow the vocal path for a long time. I was a drummer for a long time and played guitar for a little while before I ever pursued the voice.
Waiting, it's over.
Você é o criador da Hybrid Vocal Technique. Qual a diferença das técnicas vocais tradicionais?
Well, hybrid vocal technique, the system of voice that I invented and founded and started teaching about 15 years ago, was a blend of studies I had done training my own voice. All right, like I mentioned earlier, before I ever decided I wanted to sing, I played all kinds of other instruments. And while I was playing drums, we needed backing vocals. And I just assumed it would be an easy thing to do. And I bought a little head-worn microphone. And I quickly realized I couldn't sing at all. My voice is quite deep, and I couldn't hit any notes. I didn't have any kind of a falsetto or anything like that. And so eventually I sought out some instruction, and I met Al Koehn. I invented hybrid vocal technique. And what hybrid vocal technique is a blend of everything that I studied to develop my own voice and to be able to become a lead singer. So my earliest studies were in bel canto, all right, which is a classical technique. And then after that, I studied speech level singing and scientific approach application, and also Gantone, jaw, larynx, body fusion, and basic shape. That's a lot, right? But I took everything that helped me to develop my own voice and everything I'd ever read in the library before the internet, every book I could get on about the voice, everything that I studied, and I compiled and blended techniques together and made quite a few discoveries along the way. And after I did so, I had created my own training and my own warm-ups and my own system for myself as a singer. And then after that, I decided, you know what, I think I'm going to go ahead and teach this to the world because it works. It worked for me because I couldn't sing at all when I first started. I was not a singer. So nothing that I'm doing on anything you've ever heard comes from the way of natural ability. I had to train for all of that. So Hybrid vocal technique is everything that I learned and then put together and created a training system that I initially used, and then now I teach it.
Você recebeu o treinamento do lendário Al Koehn. Quais foram as técnicas que ele te ensinou?
Okay. Well, when I studied with Al Koehn in Largo, Florida, back in the late 80s and all through the 90s, Al Koehn, first and foremost, he taught me how to use my voice to sing whatever I wanted to. He was teaching people that sang all different types of music, not just heavy metal or power metal or rock. He taught everybody, and now I do the same thing. The most important lessons, there were a lot of life lessons that were taught along the way. There was to believe in myself and that this was actually possible, that there was nothing really special physically about my favorite singers. They weren't superheroes, even though they were rock stars. And the way that he said, I can teach you how to do anything that your favorite singers can do. And he did. So he broke down the kind of the mystique of, this is impossible, that I can't do what I really wanted to do. Just because I had a low speaking voice and because of the kind of music I really wanted to sing, the range was so massive in the styles that I really loved that I really didn't know if I'd be able to do it. And he told me, yes, you will. And so I carry that with me as a coach now and as a teacher, that, you can get out of vocal training what you put into it. And anytime anyone asks me, well, how long will this take? Or can I do this? Am I too young? Am I too old? Whatever. I always tell them, you can achieve your vocal goals. It just depends on what you're willing to put into it. Me, myself, I had no natural ability, but I really wanted to be able to do it. I loved it. I just kind of fell in love with the voice at a young age. And once I started to see improvements in my own voice, little by little, I just never looked back. And I just got pretty consumed with learning about the voice. So, yeah, you just like anything else in life that you really put an effort into and that you really love and are passionate about, you're going to get out of that passion what you put into it. So it's not a magic wand. It's not a magic pill. It's hard work, but the hard work pays off.
A sua técnica ajudou muitos vocalistas. Qual o maior erro que você identificou nesse processo todo?
Okay. Yes, I have trained many, many, many singers of all different styles to reach extreme notes in both directions, high and low. And the biggest mistake that singers make when trying to sing with a lot of power is shouting, just absolutely shouting and getting away from technique. It's really, really easy to do if, and there's so many variables to this, when singing live versus being in the studio. Sometimes you can't hear yourself, so you're battling and trying to sing over top of stacks of guitar amps and drums and a crowd and everything else. And if you can't hear yourself, you can blow your voice out real, real easy. So it's always important to make sure your monitoring is rock solid and your sound check is good, and that sound check, pray that it's going to be that way when you sing. So yeah, singing over top of loud volumes and abandoning good technique out of desperation is what really blows out voices, whether they're trained or not. But so it's almost like not a mistake, but it's unfortunate. So that's the one thing I see that blows voices out. Now, if it's just as far as singing in the studio or singing in private sessions with me, I would say attaching volume to range is something that will blow people's voices out, and losing placement when they do that. losing resonance and losing that clarity and that buzz up top, and then coming down and getting stuck in here really is probably one of the biggest mistakes too.
Cara, como você consegue o alcance impressionante da sua voz?
Okay, for keeping my vocal range and my technique as good as possible for touring and recording sessions, one, I am a vocal coach, so I do practice constantly with my students and on my own. So I'm always singing, right? And the more you sing, the better. But at the same time, you have to learn to pay attention to your voice. You know, if you overuse your voice, that's not a good thing. But the way I prepare and keep my voice in shape for tours is the same things that I do for coaching, because I actually, do this full time. And that is get as much sleep as you can, because your voice heals when you sleep. Stay as hydrated as you can. I drink water constantly. I'm always drinking water, room temperature water. And then practicing really good technique, like hybrid vocal technique. And I try, when touring, I try to, which is very hard, but if you can sleep as much as you can as a singer, make sure you're not staying up too late, or, maybe don't go out and, for instance, in the most recent tour I did in Europe, I decided not to go to a concert with the rest of the band, because a show beforehand, I had a problem with monitoring, and I couldn't hear anything out of my left ear. And I had oversang, just like I was talking about earlier, and I needed rest. So the smart thing to do was to say, okay, this would have been really fun, but you have to be smart, and sometimes you have to make sacrifices and, stay out of the super loud environments where you're going to be tempted to talk really loud to your friends and everything over top of the crowd and music and everything. And you don't realize that that's worse for your voice than actually screaming and shouting. Over speaking is really bad for your voice. So, so I try to talk with good placement and a good resonance on my speech. I try not to talk after the show. If I have another show following the next day, I'll try not to speak that much. I usually will wear an earplug in one ear just so I can hear my voice from the inside, and try to talk to people with good ring and buzz on my voice. And so good warm-ups, good cool-downs, and staying out of the loud environments as far as speaking to people. Those are the things that you have to do.
Eli, como você entrou no Sente e qual música você mais curtiu?
Okay, that's a great question. I remember hearing Pastor Bob talking to the crowd and introducing us at the past Immortal Fest. And he had said the same thing about, the band is feeling some new energy. And it just made me so happy, because I've been a fan of Saint since the early days of their career, and they were my favorite band for a long, long time in my life. And so I'm bringing all of that energy and that joy with me into the band. And the guys and me have really meshed well, and they've really brought a lot out of me. And Richard Lynch has really coached me a lot as far as, getting that Saint sound and how to, dig down and, use the techniques I already know how to use, but maybe haven't used in a long time, because I was used to singing power metal with a Sacrificed and Sacred Warrior and other bands. But Saint needs that heaviness to it. And so, with some suggestions and some coaching from Rich, I feel like I found my voice now, and I'm super excited about it. And my favorite song that I recorded with the band recently, we actually did 2 CDs, which were just bootlegs. They were our recording sessions, but we sold them at recent shows and in the EU, this last EU tour. we sold the rehearsal sessions and shirts together. And so I've got to record a great deal of Saint's catalog already. But my favorite one was to record so far was called Reap the Flesh. And that was off of The Mark. The album was called The Mark. And and we played that. We opened up Immortal Fest 2025 with that song. And that's one of my very favorite ones. And we also played my favorite song of all, which is Through the Sky. And that one was off of Too Late for Living. And I absolutely love that album.
O que você aprendeu musicalmente e espiritualmente no Sent?
Well, before I'd ever met the guys, I really was drawn to that traditional heavy metal sound. You know, it was very reminiscent of Judas Priest, which was pretty much my favorite band when I was a kid. And as soon as I heard Saint, the very first song I heard by them was Time's End it was the title track off of that album. And I just fell in love with it. I loved Josh Kramer's voice. I loved the music. It was just really, really good. They had a sound of their own, even though they got compared to Judas Priest a lot. They really had a sound all their own, and I just loved it. But one thing that kind of pulled me in as far as the spiritual side of things was it was very apocalyptic. It still is. But the lyrics and the music just really set this tone. You feel like when you're listening to Saint, you feel like you're going through the book of Revelations or something. It's just, you know, some of the stuff I was listening to, I got curious about. So I started reading the book of Revelations and I started researching some of this stuff. And just the fact that, you know, it can make somebody pick up their Bible and read it is a good thing. And it sounds incredible. So it was just like, you know, no brainer for me as a 17-year-old kid.
Eli, qual a diferença artística entre o Sent e o Sacrifice?
Okay, well, yeah, working with the Sacrificed, just like Saint, the last four bands I've been in, I have been around such incredible musicianship. It's just an absolute blessing. I mean, it is. I have worked with the best guitar players, drummers, bass players that I've ever even listened to. You know, I know we're talking about Saint and the Sacrifice, but when I was in Sacred Warrior and other bands I've worked with, like Dream Patrol, just incredible musicians. So the best, I've worked with what I consider to be the very best guitar players in the world, with Matt Smith and Michael Phillips, you know, just absolutely the best guitar players, and Bruce Swift, you know, and drummers, Jay Williams from The Sacrifice, Tony Velasquez from Sacred Warrior, and of course Jared Nolan with Saint, the best drummers I've ever played with. You know, it's a joy. It's an absolute gift from God to be able to be allowed to be a part of something like that. The biggest artistic difference between Saint and the Sacrificed, really just stylistically, the Sacrificed, when we first started out in the early days, we were kind of almost like in the middle of like a punk metal /, you know, back then what we called new metal, even though that's been 20 years ago. You know, so it was kind of like, you know, when we formed that, the whole idea was with the original guitar player, Johnny Bowden, he wanted to have a band that had like a newer kind of a, you know, open tuning, kind of a, you know, faster kind of a punk groove to it, but with old school vocals like Halloween or Queensryche type vocals. So when I first met him, I was like, yeah, I can do that. And so, you know, we forged a friendship and put a band together, and we recorded that first demo, which was the Da Vinci Hoax. And so the sound evolved a bit from there after Johnny moved on, and then Jay, me, and Daniel, and Christian, and Michael Phillips. We got Michael Phillips. I met him in Norway, and filling in for Jimmy at Nordic Fest for Deliverance. So that's where I met Michael Phillips, and he joined the Sacrifice, and then Mike, Jay, Daniel, and I did the 3 album together. And that was just like, wow, we're we're finally hitting like next level stuff here, because Michael Phillips is just, it's like playing with Yngwie, And then I got the same gift when I joined Saint. It was just like, what is going on here? Like Matt Smith is just like, him and Mike are just like, they're next level. They're, in my humble opinion, no pain or shade to any other guitar players, but I think they're the elite. They're just incredible. But the Sacrifice kind of eventually found its sound, and it was power metal, but not like your Scandinavian, power metal, but more maybe American power metal, traditional heavy metal, thrash, power metal, kind of a blend like that. And so the vocals were clean. I sang with my full range, as low as I could sing, as high as I can sing, but I sang with a clean vocal. And my influences that I used mainly for that vocal style for the Sacrifice were like Michael Kiska and Rob Halford and Bruce Dickinson. So blend those together. That's what I was kind of going for with that, with the Sacrifice. And with Saint, just dug deep, channeled my inner Josh Kramer and Rob Halford and a little bit of Dave Nelson, and and then as influences, and then dug deep and found that within myself, and so I'm bringing that to the table with Saint, and Saint still has that traditional heavy metal sound that they've always had, but now that we have Matt and Jared and Rich and I, we're taking it to the next level, and I'm super excited for the next album to come out, because I just cannot wait.
Existe algum trabalho no Sacrifice que você acha que é o seu ápice vocal?
Okay. Yes, there are a couple of songs that were very, very demanding for different reasons. As far as my vocal peak, when I was younger, I used to use whistle voice for stuff, and so like in the earlier albums that were recorded between 2005 and around 2007, I used to use a lot of like the highest vocal register, and I used to do harmonies and stuff like that, and that was quite difficult to pull off live, because whistle voice, the whistle register is not as reliable as everything else, at least not in my voice. So I think on the demo album, the Da Vinci Hoax, the title track, the Da Vinci Hoax had some probably the highest note I ever recorded, which was I think a G sharp 6 or something. And then the new stuff was really challenging. We covered Before the Storm by Queensryche. That was pretty challenging. But I think the 2012 album, the 2012 album, which came out in 2010, from the Sacrifice, I kind of feel like that song, I recorded it in 2007. I remember this. It was actually the first song we recorded for that album. And the song In Heaven, I think was one of my favorites of all, for different reasons, and it was very challenging. And then on the 3 album, there's a song called Time's Up, and I sing very, very, very high with my true belt voice, and that one's very, very difficult. So yeah, that's kind of prime Eli stuff around the 3 album.
Como foi a sua passagem icônica pelo Sacred Warrior?
Okay. My two favorite Christian heavy metal bands, from the time I was 16 years old all the way until I started to actually sing in some Christian metal bands of my own, my favorite bands were Saint and Sacred Warrior. Those were my two favorites. And then after that, Deliverance and Tourniquet and Haven, because all of them had like really good vocals and good music, but mainly Saint and Sacred Warrior. So I was already a fan, and I was playing with the Sacrifice at the time. We had just finished up recording the 3 album in December. It came out in February. And then I want to say it was May of 2012. I was just scrolling through Facebook, and Steve Watkins had put a post out there saying that Ray Parra had, decided to pursue other projects, and that they were interested in finding another singer. So there was an audition, and I was like, I was pretty excited about that because I thought, let's just see what happens, And I actually had conversations with Ray Parra before this because I wanted him to do a song on the 2012 album with the Sacrifice, but he was so busy he didn't have time to do it, and so I ended up recording that myself. But so I had kind of a little bit of a friendship going. We had just kind of briefly met for a little bit. And so after that happened, I actually messaged him. I was like, dude, do you mind if I audition? He was like, go for it. Ray's one of the nicest people you'll ever meet in your life. And I'm like, okay. So I got in contact with Steve Watkins, and he sent me 2 tracks. He sent me the title track of Waiting in Darkness and Fallen Hero. So those were the audition tracks. And so I recorded them and sent them to him, and I also sent a few songs from stuff I had done with the Sacrificed, and back then there was an audition that I had done for the band Dragon Force, and there's a whole funny story behind that I won't get into right now, but how that came about and why I did that and everything. But they liked the audition. They really liked it. In fact, the most of the vocals that I did, I mean like 95%, other than a couple of some phrasing I had done a little differently that he wanted adjusted, almost every bit of those 2 songs was from the audition. So I feel like God sang through me and helped me to nail that. I was supposed to be there for that album. And so it was a lot of fun. It was great getting to meet some of my heavy metal heroes, because when I was a drummer, before I even sang, I was a huge Tony Velasquez fan. And so meeting all of them, I was quite fanboyed out, like calling them by their first and last name. Hi, Bruce Swift. So it was a lot of fun. And, when Ray was ready to come back, I still had plenty of things that I had, very, very full schedule of teaching and other things in my personal life. And I recorded an album with Dream Patrol in that period when Ray came back. So, yeah, man, it was just a smooth transition. God used me. I was there at the right time. He used me. We put out an incredible album. And very, very just the Holy Spirit just all over that album and the whole recording process. There was so much going on, and just a lot going on in that with health problems with different members and things. Joe had a heart transplant, and Bruce, Tony had some heart problems. Bruce had hip replacements. All kinds of stuff was going on. And it was just, there was more praying going on in that time in my life, just for others and serious situations. It was just something else. So I have a lot of fond memories of that whole recording process. And yeah, it was a good time. And I'm really happy to have we're all still brothers, still great friends. And so it was wonderful.
Eli, quais foram os maiores desafios para cantar no Sacred Warrior?
Well, the biggest challenges of singing in the style of Sacred Warrior, well, actually, it was, I feel almost as if the newer material, I put more intensity on, a little, more grit in the voice. And the classic material was similar in timbre in the way that I sang with the Sacrificed. So obviously Ray's voice is a lot higher than mine. So it was challenging. I had to dig deep and use every bit of technique that I have to sing the classic material, but I was able to do it with a cleaner sound. And when we recorded Waiting in Darkness, they didn't want a Ray Parra clone. They wanted something new. They wanted this album to be heavier. So I sang, I leaned into it a little bit as far as, grit and intensity. So I was channeling a little bit of Dickinson and Dio when I did Waiting in Darkness. So I actually felt like my own stuff was a little more challenging, and that's not taking anything away from Ray, because his stuff was equally as challenging with the range, because that high, beautiful tenor voice that Ray Parra has is just unmatched, so it was a challenge all over for a singer. But I think, honestly, the biggest challenge was probably, actually it ended up not being a challenge, but just something to learn and deal with, which prepared me for things with down the road with joining Saint, was that I was replacing, or at least filling in for, a beloved singer, a singer that people had listened to for decades. So it was kind of like, oh, there's a new Sacred Warrior album out, but it's like, it's not Ray Parra. How are you supposed to do that? And God helped me. That's how I was able to step in there and do that. And, for a season, that was me in Sacred Warrior. And now Ray's back, and they've never missed a beat. If anything, they're better than they've ever been.
Você chegou a compor ou participar de ideias para novos materiais com o Sacred Warrior?
Yes. The stuff that I contributed was actually, I wrote some of the lyrics in the title track, Waiting in Darkness. Right after the high note that, that high scream I did in that song, right after that, they asked me when I was in the audition process, they were like, okay, there's a huge instrumental section from right after this chorus all the way to the end. And they wanted to see if I could write. And so they were like, feel free to write some lyrics for this. So after the initial audition, which was just like the first, verses and choruses, right after, so when I added everything from the high scream all the way to the end, all of that was what I had wrote. So after I sent that back to him, Steve was real happy with it, and then he had me adjust a few of the phrasings with the end, but I wrote all of those lyrics. And so Steve and Bruce helped me as far as like they wrote all of the other lyrics, and there were a few songs that Ray had actually done, and so I was like, hey, can I hear those so I can hear how this song goes, and so then I just added a little bit, and Steve produced me a little bit and was like, try it like this, sing it like that. But yeah, so that was the song that I really wrote lyrics for, from the scream all the way to the end on Waiting in Darkness. And then some vocal melodies, and I came up with some really strange harmonies on a song called Desperately Wicked, and I was super happy that Steve actually kept those. So, yeah, but it was fun. And before I left the band, I had started writing some lyrics, but those never came to fruition. But it was fun. I was told I was always told, we welcome any ideas and lyrics and stuff. They're very cool about it.
Quais foram as suas influências vocais? Elas mudaram com o tempo?
Okay, my vocal influences today, this just puts me in, this shows my age and puts me in this little bubble. Some people say, oh, you're stuck in the 70s and 80s. I can't argue with that very much because my vocal influences have not changed very much. I would say my original influences when I was a kid and I wanted to sing who I thought was really awesome, I didn't end up sounding anything like them. But I loved Brad Delp from Boston and I loved Bon Scott from AC/DC. I don't sound like either one of them. Maybe a little bit when I do some of Saints stuff with the grit and stuff, but that's about it. But when I was becoming a singer and when I was starting to wish I could sing like certain people, and I started to kind of, the stuff that I was practicing to gave me my influences. So first and foremost was Rob Halford from Judas Priest, and then Michael Kiske from Halloween, Jeff Tate from Queensryche. I loved the strange kind of vocal effects that Guy Ritter from Tourniquet did. I loved Kevin Ayers from Haven. I loved that big giant vibrato he had and everything. And of course, last but not least, Bruce Dickinson from Iron Maiden. Okay, so if you Frankenstein Rob Halford, Michael Kiske, Jeff Tate, Bruce Dickinson, and then my favorite Christian metal singers, Josh Kramer, Ray Parra, Guy Ritter, Kevin Ayers, you blend all those together and that's what you get when you listen to The Sacrificed and anything else I've done. So, yeah, it's still the same. Stuck in the 80s and 70s.
Você acha que as novas gerações estão recebendo bem a mensagem do metal cristão?
That's a really good, interesting question because I think about that a lot. Because I had the perspective, I've had kind of a journey with this perspective, which was being a musician, right before this golden age, so to speak, of Christian metal, which really kind of erupted around between 84 and, right around 1984 is when like Saint and Stryper came out. And then right after that, there was this flood of bands. You had Sacred Warrior and you had White Cross and Shout, and all these bands just came out of nowhere. Deliverance, Tourniquet, Haven, just incredible. And it was really cool because I remember, it seemed like I was spending more time at the Christian bookstores buying albums and tapes than I was at Specs Music, where I used to frequent a lot and buy all the heavy metal albums and things, secular stuff. So it was just like an explosion that happened all at once. And I just remember myself and a lot of other friends that were exposed to this stuff. It was kind of like, wow, you like them too? Wow, you like them too? And then, and all of us playing that like in our cars and trucks and stuff, or, kind of, passing tapes around and stuff. It just was like, it was spreading and people were hearing really good things through the lyrics. And back in those days, the Christian metal message was very obvious, in the lyrical content. And, so it was like, it was a strong message, and it rubbed a lot of people the wrong way for different reasons. Parents didn't understand when they heard the music until they realized what the words were. And then of course, people, oh, I don't want Jesus preached down my throat. Oh no, but it really brought a lot of people into getting to know Jesus. It really did. And I'm talking about when, the Christian metal scene first started, Saint and Stryper, Deliverance, all those bands just kind of came out of nowhere and between 84 and 86. Excuse me. Between 84 and 86, I think it was like just a massive explosion. And it really resonated because like now that I'm in Saint, like what I consider to be the original real Christian heavy metal band, because I felt like Stryper came out around the same time, but they were more, this is just my opinion, they're super good, man. I mean, from the voice all the way through, everyone in that band is just rips. But they were more maybe radio friendly, you know, maybe kind of like, I don't know, Kiss almost, you know, just like almost glam, but not, a little glam, but just very radio friendly, very well produced. And then the first time I heard Saint, I was like, oh man, this is the kind of music I listen to. And the words were awesome, man, and just, you know, apocalyptic and everything. So now that I'm in Saint and when we're playing shows, I meet guys my age and a little bit older that have been fans since 1984, since their first album. And yeah, I mean, and I think sometimes about how many of those there are and that there were from those years all over the place, you know, just kind of reaping it all in and bringing a lot of people to know Jesus and explore those lyrics the same way that I did. As far as the newer generation, when we're playing shows, I've seen all ages at these shows, and the same thing is happening, even though the bands vary, you know, almost multi-generational now. But at some of the shows that we've played, it's people my age, older and younger, from teens all the way through. And so I feel like the same thing is happening. You know, I don't know. I think maybe it kind of gone underground in the grunge years, and then exploded here recently.
Qual o conselho que você daria para quem quer chegar ao seu nível de técnica?
The most important advice I give to someone who truly wants to grow to reaching a high technical level is to never give up. Never give up. And to work smarter, you know, pay attention to not only the meaning or the exercise when you're practicing or when they're training, like if they're studying hybrid vocal technique, I'll tell them, don't just do the exercises matter-of-factly, just ma 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 ma. Don't just do it to get through it, but have your mindset that every single part of that is for improvement, so that even the most potentially boring classical exercises, you breathe new life into them mentally. You're seeking the improvements and paying a lot of attention to the basics. So if you have, like in my stuff, if you have levels 1 through 8, I tell everybody, take your time. Make sure level one is more important than level 8. Level 8 is fun, but you'll never get there unless you master level 1. So spend more time on the foundations of your technique and always seek improvements when you're practicing your training and your singing. And always, and this is right out of Al Koehn's mouth, think the sound before and while you're making it.
Eli, tem algum projeto novo aí, quentinho saindo do forno?
Okay. Yeah, I've got right now my HVT flagship course is currently on its version 3.0, and I'm always improving it. I love getting feedback from students, from my private students, as well as VIP members and people that study my courses. So I'm always compiling notes, and I'm always trying to improve it. So yeah, so I'm still doing that. There will be a 4.0. I'm currently working on a grit and vocal distortion course and vocal decoding course. I've got all kinds of stuff I'm working on. And musically, currently we're writing and recording the next Saint album. And I can't even tell you how excited I am about that. So, yeah. So that's the new stuff. That's what's coming down the pike.
Eli, deixe uma mensagem para a família Agostinho's Music, para os seus fãs.
Okay. To all of you in Brazil, I love you guys. I appreciate you following my career and for all the kindness that you've shown me throughout the years with many, many different bands. I can't wait for you to hear my new stuff once it's finally done and it comes out. So make sure you follow Saint, the band that I'm in right now. And if you're someone who is in love with the voice the way I am and singing, you can find me at hybridvocaltechnique.com. If you want to learn how to sing or just talk to me or whatever, feel free. And to stay in touch with Saint, you can find Saint on Facebook as well as saintsite.com. And I think there might still be some copies of the Immortalizer CD, which was that rehearsal bootleg CD I was talking about, where you can hear that my favorite song that I played on there. Immortalized 2025 is that bootleg CD. So yeah, but I love you guys and girls. God bless you. And thank you for having me on here today and spending this time with me. Take care.